Hey, so I just sold my old CNC machine and bought a Onefinity Journeyman, which means that I need to convert my old CNC table for the larger footprint of the Journeyman. So to start that off, I must first clean up the mess has accumulated on my new workbench. So let's do that with a little camera magic. Ta-da! Uh, Yeah, so it's clean now because who really wants to watch me clean a table? But if you do, I have the footage. Anyway, so now that this is clean, we're going to take off the top and salvage it because this is still good plywood and it's probably worth more than this whole table right now. So I'm going to take the screws out, set it to the side, and we're going to salvage as much of this frame as possible for the next table because basically these beams are no good because they're too short, but the height and the legs are good for the next table. So I really just have two long 2x4s to attach to the front and the back and do something little special in the center, but we'll get to that later. Okay, so this is the basic framework that we're going to be using for the new table. So we'll have two cross beams for support. You have your front and your back. This measures at about 4 feet from front to back. The only thing I didn't account for when I bought my 2x4s were actually the supports because, you know, they're under there. I kind of forgot about them. So anyway, I'll just need two more 2x4s to replace these. And I'm going to keep as much of this as I can for extra stuff that I do. But I have a drawer here now that I kept random CNC related things that I'm going to get rid of in the new design and move them over to the other side of the work area, and it'll make more sense once everything's finished. So next up is to take out all the supports, so I'm just left with the long rails. So So this is what's left. All the main pieces are down. And so I'm going to show you the one regret that I had when I built this in the first place. And you may already notice it. These tiny, tiny wheels. Um, you know, when I first bought my CNC, you know, I was spending upwards of $2,000. And at the time, wheels and casters, I was basically using all the scrap material I had. And these wheels were the cheapest that I could find that had the highest weight rating. So I think they were probably all like $9 or $10 for the whole thing on Amazon. So, I mean, they worked pretty well. They haven't deformed. I mean, so they weren't a bad deal. It's just them under the table wasn't the best. So I'm going to keep them, use them for something else, but I am moving on to a nice beefier 3-inch wheel for the next bench. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to show that. So I'm going to finish taking that out, and then I'm keeping the frame pieces there and there. Now that the workbench is apart, these are the only pieces that I'll be keeping to use in the next workbench because they're already the right width. So now I'm going to add some 2x4s to give them the right length. All right, so I have 4 2x4s here that I'm going to measure and cut down to 69 inches. And I'm doing this outside because I don't want to put all the sawdust in there. But The length will make sense once I get back into the shop and show you the original framework that I had and how it all fits together. All right, so we're gonna ignore the mess and focus on the rest, which is the side rails for the cart. So the top and the bottom are 48 inches long, and I left a notch here of about 1.5 inches before I put in this support brace, which is about 31 inches tall. So I roughly did the math because I originally had 2-inch casters, and I was like, oh, it'll be at around 34-ish once the top is on it. But now I have 3-inch casters plus the hardware makes them about 4-inch casters, so I'll be closer to 36 in height. So just make a mental note of that, of how high you want the top of your table to be for you when you cut these beams. So like I said, the top and the bottom are 48 with 1.5 inch gap to allow the support 2x4 to go in. This beam is slightly shorter, probably closer to 40, but only because it's just connecting this, just adding a middle support, and I used it as a place for shelving later. So this is the bottom, but the bottom and the top are exactly the same, but I'm just saying this is the bottom, this is where my old casters were, this is where my new casters will be. I'm going to start connecting it from the bottom, so that way I can just flip the entire table over instead of trying to put casters on a already built table. So let's get into connecting the framework and then attaching the casters. All right, so next up we're going to attach the casters. These are 3-inch wheels plus the extra hardware makes it about a 4-inch caster overall. I got these off of Amazon. I think they're maybe like $15 for the whole set of 4. So if you're interested, that'll be a link in the description, or down below. Note that it comes with 2 sets of screws. It comes with bolts, and it actually comes with the screws. So when I opened up the package, I only saw the bolts and started to freak out, but the screws were in there. So you get all the hardware you need. So now I'm just going to attach those to the 4 corners and then flip this bad boy over. And so when I start that off, I'm going to do some pilot holes, and I just wanted to show this thing. So this bit is a Montana Brands 2-in-1 bit. So I'm not sponsored, but this is really cool. So on one end you have your Phillips head, and then you can take that out once I do it right. There we go. And then on the other end you have a drill bit, so you don't have to swap back and forth between the drill and a screwdriver. You can just keep the same thing in, flip it, and rip it. That's not a slogan or anything. I just felt like saying it. So let's get to work. One thing to remember is to watch out for your hole placement when you are trying to add casters later, because your screws could get in the way. So I'm going to start by kind of figuring out the best placement where it doesn't impede my other screws. Do my pilot holes. Get all the way around. Over there, over there. I like that. All right, now that all 4 wheels are on, the moment you all been waiting for, to see if I flip this over and it falls apart on me. So, 4 wheels, supports there and there. Like I said, this is the bottom. Move you out of the way. And gracefully, so gracefully, ever so gracefully, flip this bench. Flip that bench. Put my leg there so it doesn't go wild on me. Hey! We got a table. Well, we got to start a table. So, now, I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. Take the square. Make sure we're all flush across all these corners. Attach the beams. And then we'll have a tabletop. So, I'm going to do that. Because you already saw the process on the bottom. I'm going to do that. Come back. And we'll look at what's next. Alright, the top braces are on and it is rolling smoothly. So, I'm really turning this around because there's some ugly 2x4 back here and I want that to be the front anyway. So at this point in the build, depending on how far you want to go, you can pretty much be done. I would add in 2 support beams here and here, about 2 feet in from either side to connect the front and the back. That'll give you some extra support for whatever surface you put on top. I'm going to use 3/4 melamine, but you know, melamine was cheaper and it's very heavy, but it's sturdy. You know, if you have good plywood connections, you know how fancy you want to get. But yeah, you can add in the support beams, put it on top. You know, you pretty much got a workbench after you drill it down. You can also add in some support beams in this middle area, and then do some shelving. I think I used like maybe 1/2-inch plywood for that. But yeah, you can do some shelving, or you can store your controller box for your Onefinity, or whatever CNC you're using. You can store stuff under here, make some drawers, shelving, whatever. So this frame by itself, with it, add in the supports, you're pretty much done. I'm going to do something a little different with mine, so if you want to stick around for that, I'm going to get into that now. But if you like what this is and you're not going to do anything too fancy, thank you for watching. But yeah, so I'm going to get into my next piece, which is I'm going to add in a support beam all the way across here, about 2 feet in from the front of the frame, and then I'm going to add in a support beam here and here, and that's going to be where my scrap wood cutoffs from earlier come into place, because I'll be able to use those and not waste any material, because 2x4 is not cheap. In my area is roughly about $4 a piece, so you can have a workbench for, let's say about 50 bucks in lumber, and whatever the cost of 50 to 100 pack of screws will cost you, and then the casters. So anyway, less rambling, more workbenchy. Crossbar. Okay. So, as you can see, after a lot of trial and error, I was able to get the tabletop onto the workbench. Like I said, melamine by itself is very heavy. So if you're doing this by yourself, I would recommend maybe cutting the sheet into like thirds. That way you can just lift up each individual sheet, drill it into place, aligning with, you know, whatever your bracket system is. Or just getting somebody to help you lift it, which would have made this go way faster. Or using plywood, 3/4 plywood, you know, options. But anyway, next up, I'm going to trim off the excess. I'm going to have a little bit of an overhang on either side, but I don't need a whole extra 1.5 feet. So I'm going to trim that down, and then I'm going to work out the rest of my measurements for the inset, and I'm going to do that on here. So I'll use some of the leftover scrap 2x4 and just kind of mount it under here so I can use my saw, my track saw, whatever I'm going to use to cut in my inset. And that way it doesn't actually cut into the framework of the actual bench itself. So let's get started with that. Kind of go speed through that a little bit, just, you know, do my big cuts, and then I'll explain the method behind the inset cuts. So, non-table related intermission. Last night, someone tried to break in and steal tools from my shop. I came in and the garage door was wide open, and one of my tools was missing. But apparently, it was too heavy for them, so they made it about 6 feet out the door before they left it in the yard. So I guess it doesn't pay to be weak and a thief. All right, well, nothing else was missing, so let's get back to the bench build. Now we're back from that little interlude. So this is the underside of the table. So what I've done is I made a line. That's the center point of where I'm going to put my inset at on the top of the table. So where I'm going to cut out. And then, it's very faint, but I made a line just tracing across this beam. And so I moved the table about 3/4 of an inch forward, made that line, and now I'm going to drill a tiny hole in that point, and that'll be my cut line. And so when I move the table back 3/4, part of the inset will rest right in the middle of here, and then I'll put a support beam there and there so that when I take this in and out, it has a place to rest without, you know, having to screw it in and out every time. So I'm going to go and cut that. And now I lovingly add the bracer block. So this is mainly for the inset to sit here. So it doesn't need to screw into here or on that side. It's really just to have 4 points of connection for this guy. And then I'm going to add a block here and here, so when I set this down inside, there'll be a locking mechanism so the top doesn't move. So I'm just going to screw that into here and go under the table and set it in, and then put my tabletop on. And for finishing touches, this is the underside of the table. I added in a block so that the table doesn't move back and forth, and this lock stops it so there's no sliding. I may add in one more that holds it down, but usually the CNC will move it back and forth and not up and down. So the way it currently is, it locks in pretty good. It doesn't move or slide. So one on each side, and easy enough to do that. And we're good. So, after some unexpected stops and starts and some petty burglary, the first phase of the CNC table is done. I have the removable insert made. Next up, I'm going to add in a lower shelf, and I'm going to wrap all the exposed melamine in edge banding because exposed melamine is not very friendly on the fingertips, and if I'm going to have to remove this, I'd rather it feel nice. Now, before I do any other stuff, I get to do the fun part, and I get to put the CNC together. So my next video will be about actually putting the CNC together and all the steps that it takes. Everything I've heard, it doesn't take that long. And there are lots of videos about it, but this is the way I'm doing mine. Plus, mine's going to be different because removable insert. So stay tuned for that. And if you don't already follow me on Instagram and would like to hear more about the burglary that happened in my shop, just drop a comment and I may make a video. And depending on when you are watching this, there might already be a video, so check below, or I may drop a tile or something if it actually exists. But if I make the video, which I probably am, definitely going to include things I learned because of this process and things that can help you protect yourself and keep your shop safe. So, until then, thank you for watching. You know what to do if you like the content, and I'll see you in the next video.